it has been a kind of whack weekend for both teams, specifically the Nuggets, because on Monday night, Tuesday night, the Nuggets lost at home to the Golden State Warriors. What was the score?
The score of that game was Golden State 116, Denver Nuggets 100.
Damn.
16-point blowout.
To the worst team in the league, a team that I don't even know if they were trying to win.
A team that the best explanation I saw from someone was, don't worry about it. They're impossible to scout because no one knows who's on their team.
That's a good, the G League Warriors.
This was their 14th win, which, I mean, it's been like a month and a half since the Nuggets played them, but the Nuggets were trying to avoid giving them their 10th win. So it's not like they've made a lot of progress since then.
Sure. But the Nuggets ostensibly have made some progress, but now a almost healthy roster looked worse than the roster that pulled out a miraculous victory against them a month and a half ago.
Well, and it wasn't, in some ways it was and it wasn't the most concerning loss of the week because the Los Angeles Clippers loss, they lost 132-103 against a team they're battling for the second seed with.
Oh, yeah.
And they weren't even competitive in that game.
No, yeah, at least there was a moment where it was like, Nuggets, we know how y'all operate. You'll pull this off against the Warriors. There was almost no point in the Clippers game where it looked like they had any capability of closing the gap and then maintaining a lead.
I mean, I'm concerned about both, and I'm concerned about almost every player on the Nuggets right now. I'm not concerned about Jokic because he is still consistently doing the things he needs to do. He still got 21 points in that Clippers game. But it was another game where Murray was inconsistent. Millsap was just terrible. Harris is still having shooting problems. Porter didn't get to play in that game, but then he was terrible in the Golden State game. You're looking at this team and you're like, how are we a year further into this? And we're seeing the Denver Nuggets playoff team come back, and in some ways, you're trading out Harris, who wasn't great in the playoffs offensively, but was okay with Barton, who is still streaky as ever. It's just he's hitting more than he's missing.
Mm-hmm. And not to forget about the bench that's been super inconsistent since everyone's been back and healthy. Very strangely, like a week and a half ago, the Nuggets waived Jordan McRae.
Their big shooter, who they had traded, in essence, traded Beasley and Hernangomez for.
Yeah, they waived him, just like outright let him go. And then as of yesterday, signed Troy Daniels from the Lakers. Like, the Lakers waived him, then the Nuggets signed him. To do what, I'm not sure. He's a nearly 40% from three scorer. But with the way that Malone's rotations are set up, we're never going to see him play. And that's both those players are in contrast to Malik Beasley, who is lighting it up in Minnesota.
I've been wondering, especially since the trade deadline, the Nuggets haven't had the same energy.
No.
And I'm starting to wonder if that has to do with the fact that Malik Beasley and Juancho Hernangomez were so much a part of the culture of the Nuggets. And we look back to the Rockies last year when they got rid of Parra and Gonzalez, and they just had a lot of serious guys. And you wonder if that's something happening with the Nuggets right now.
Yeah, possibly, but like that's certainly not an excuse that the Nuggets could use, nor do I want to use it as a fan, because that just shows how vulnerable and weak the team was to begin with. If your chemistry falls apart because of two bench players' absence, then that means that you didn't have the mental toughness to be in the situation that you're in, let alone succeed in the situation in the playoffs. Super frustrating that it seems so many moving parts are happening and nothing is fitting.
Well, and Torrey Craig just keeps getting more and more minutes under Malone again, and he completely shuts down the offense. Like, at least when Harris is on the floor, they can just avoid him. Torrey Craig is like a cog in the machine that isn't moving. Like, he's not helping you in any way, even if you don't pass to him on the offensive side. And this has been the first week in a long time where I've really started questioning what Malone's doing and if he's holding the team back more than helping them.
Yeah. Shout out to Reddit because the Fire Malone train had existed for like 3 years, and then it went ominously quiet for a while. But very quickly, like you look at the rotations, you look at the loss to Los Angeles, the Clippers, where they were struggling to get offense, and he just wouldn't put MPJ back in the game. And then you have the weird rotations losing to a Golden State team, which there was no position that was a disadvantage for the Nuggets. Like every single player on the Nuggets team was ostensibly more talented than any player on the Warriors team. But then you had Steve Kerr versus Mike Malone, and Malone got outcoached. I'm not sure. That was such a weird game. And it really shows that the Nuggets defense is just, it's not been able to maintain down the stretch, and the offense is still not caught up to the best version of the Nuggets defense.
So the standings right now are in the Western Conference are the Lakers 47-13. Around the trade deadline, the Nuggets were still within fighting distance of the Lakers. Now they're really not. They're 6.5 games back. The Clippers are 42-19 in second place, and the Nuggets are 41-20 in third place. That Clippers game being the swing game right there, which is really frustrating. And then right behind them, the Rockets are 39-21, so just 1 game back from the Nuggets, and one game in the loss column. The Utah Jazz are 39-22, so 2 games back in the loss column, and the Thunder are 38-24. So right now the Nuggets sit as a 3 seed, and their matchup would be against the Oklahoma City Thunder, who just again destroyed them a week and a half ago with Chris Paul. How do you feel about that matchup with the second round being against the Clippers right now?
I would still have to. I think we're being a bit of doomsdayers, but we're the most like reasoned and leveled sky is falling people that I've ever heard. So I can say confidently that I think the Nuggets would still edge the Thunder, but it would go into 6 to 7 games for sure. And that would rest on the fact that I don't think the defense will be able to clamp down, especially if Chris Paul gets hot early. The Nuggets have, I think, in the last several games, after the All-Star break, they've shown that they still kind of sweat under pressure. So I could definitely see Chris Paul being able to pick them apart mid-range, leaving more guys open from the perimeter. And if those shots fall, because Thunder are playing as one of the most confident teams in the league right now, that the Nuggets would really struggle there. But I think they would edge them. Jamal Murray has stepped up enough, I believe, to be a second-round playoff dude alongside Jokic. And then just like a question, like kind of a roll of the die, who are the other 2 to 4 players that you need to show up? And unfortunately, for some of the wins the Nuggets have had recently, it's been Torrey Craig, who you don't want to be one of the essential pieces.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, he sort of grinds things to a halt. I'm less high on Murray right now. I feel like he looks a lot like he did last year, and I'm afraid what that looks like in the playoffs. I'm hoping he learned his lesson, but I mean, we know that the Nuggets had to rely on Murray being hot just to get to Game 7 of the second round, including a game where he just took over in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
But I think that is a problem. I'm worried about Gallinari in that Thunder series. We finally get to see playoff Gallinari, and it's on the other side of the coin, which is just very frustrating. And I mean, I think the Nuggets have to do everything they can to get that 2 seed, because if you have to play the Lakers and the Clippers in the first round, or in the 2 rounds back to back, you need to at least get the Clippers at home.
Yeah.
Because the Nuggets don't. I mean, the hard part right now is the 2 teams that the Nuggets match up against the least are the 2 teams ahead of them, which makes sense. But for the Nuggets, it seems like it's more matchup problems at times than it is chemistry. And they should have played better against Clippers. Like, they have the defensive personnel to at least contain the Clippers. They just weren't deploying them in that game.
Yeah, that was an interesting one where like the Clippers defense can start to lock down, but really, I think the easiest way to play the Nuggets right now is to get them to overthink because that loss was really punctuated by turnovers early, and that just killed their momentum. And a team like the Clippers can then kind of like park the bus on them and just keep the players in front of them, bullying them, not letting them get in the paint at all. Yeah, it's interesting, and unfortunately now looking back at the trade a little while, the Nuggets have not improved very much. They did a good job in flipping Beasley for a late round first from Houston, but you didn't add any athleticism or length or shooting. And Troy Daniels, I don't know what he'd have to do in practice to jump up to be like the backup shooting guard. It's really, the Nuggets are too talented, but no one is talented enough outside of Jokic to really be a game changer.
Well, I mean, they've been holding on to all of these pieces for years, and then basically time expired on them trading them. Like, that's sort of what happened with Beasley and Hernan Gomez. They weren't able to put everybody together into a trade that actually made them better. It was just like, we're going to pass the buck down the road. And, you know, one of the things was they're in a contract year. We want to let them play. Who cares? Like, that's not your job as an NBA team. Like, I understand that you want to honor them or whatever. The same thing, you can just let them out of their contract at the end of the year. They can sign one-year deals somewhere else. Someone was going to take a flyer on both of them.
Yeah.
Like, that is not your job as an NBA team, and I think that they overplayed their position there.
Sure. I mean, well, they sent them to a good situation in Minnesota. Like, Beasley wouldn't look this good on a playoff team because he wouldn't be given those looks.
Yeah.
But it is undeniable that the Nuggets lost a greater talent than they returned. I mean, it's meaningless to many, but I still like the fact that the Nuggets got 40 wins before 20, which is the old prophecy of Phil Jackson that elite teams get to the 40 before the 20 in the win-loss column. So they were able to do that. The sky isn't falling, but the Nuggets' schedule is the hardest in the NBA leading up to the playoffs, in that, well, hell, they lost to they lost to Golden State. Don't let me jinx it. They're playing Charlotte right now. Lost to the Warriors. Have the Hornets, the Cavaliers on the road, and then Bucks at home. Mavericks, Spurs, Lakers, Clippers, Thunder, Raptors. Then get a brief reprieve in the Bulls, but then Heat, Spurs, Thunder, Warriors again, which that may be, so far that's been the hardest team they've played. So really, I mean, it
gets a little easier at the end of the year, and during that stretch, the only home game is the Clippers after the Bucks. Like, they have 6 on the road in that stretch.
Yeah, and apparently the NBA schedule makers understand. Well, we did forget the Nuggets did handily beat the Raptors.
Yeah, they did, and that was a good win. I mean, the Raptors are a top team in the East, and it came at the right time. It was one of those Jokic games where he just took off. He had 23, 18 rebounds, 11 assists.
And Gary Harris didn't look terrible in that game.
No, and I mean, I think that to me, it's the problem is not that there aren't guys that look good. It's that no one except for Jokic is consistent.
Yeah.
And they just have to figure that out, because we saw that in the playoffs, and Jokic was almost good enough to win it by themselves. Like, they were in that 5th overtime. What was it, 4 overtimes? He almost won that game by himself. But
65 minutes.
They need another guy who's consistent every night, and then they need the role players to play their parts. And
I mean, I think it could be Murray, but even as a score first point guard, his position alone is not enough. That's really where, you want Grant and MPJ to be good two-way players, like the knockdown 3 shooters and dudes who are able to help clog up the paint, switch on rotations, and just make life difficult for teams, and really match up against a LeBron, an AD, a Paul George, and Kawhi. And thus far, that hasn't happened. So it's an interesting spot. The Nuggets were 2-2 since our last recording.
mm-hmm.
quality win against the Raptors, quality loss against the Clippers, and then okay, you should have definitely won against the Pistons, and then what the hell were y'all doing against the Warriors? So you got to see the entire gamut of this team and why they're so frustrating.
And I mean, every loss just matters so much since the teams are so close. Like they go on a 5-game losing streak here. They're looking at not even a home first round series right now.
Really,